Welcome to BioCode. In this video, we will talk about the introduction to Unix. So we will see what are the applications of Unix and how we can utilize Linux or Unix in bioinformatics analysis. What are the applications? How this facilitates, how this operating system facilitates us in our day-to-day bioinformatics analysis, and how it makes the analysis easier as compared to those users of those users or researchers in bioinformatics who do not use Linux. So I hope this video makes it clear to you. So let's get started. First of all, what we really need to understand is that what is Unix and what is the basic difference between Unix and Linux. To do that, what I'm going to propose is the fact that Unix is basically a foundational operating system that was built early in the 60s, and then Linux came along, and Linux was actually a different flavor of Unix, and it was you can consider that a frosting on the cake. So Unix is under the hood works similar across Linux and macOS. macOS and Linux themselves are based on Unix, but there is a minor difference between Linux and macOS itself. So if we talk about Unix in general, and suppose that Unix and Linux are same, suppose, and what is the difference between Unix and others? So the basic difference is that Unix provides you a complete access over the entire operating system. You have a full-fledged experience of the operating system, and you can talk directly to the hardware of the computer or the system that you are utilizing through the operating system. And whereas other operating systems do not allow you that kind of functionality, such as you can consider Android, iOS, or even Windows, or any other operating system that does not really allow you that kind of full access. And Unix has a huge and very popular community that that helps you throughout your problems. If you run into any problem, if you run into any issue, you can go to Stack Exchange and different other forums where there are a plethora of people and that are ready to help you out in the if you run into any issue, and that too at free of cost, at no additional charge. And as you know, Linux and Unix are free of cost, and we do not really pay any fee to actually install or utilize these on our computers. And whereas we have to pay for the help or desk support on other operating systems such as Windows, if you run into any issue, there is a community available for Windows as well, but it is not full-fledged community. And in case there are some issues with the operating system, that can only fixed by the company itself that provides that operating system. In that case, you might have to pay, for example, if you are utilizing the Windows operating system. The best function or the functionality provided by Unix or Linux operating system is a command line functionality, whereas other operating system does not really have command line functionality. Some do have CMD or command line operating system or functionalities such as Windows or macOS even, but they do not have that kind of under the hood functionality available or the capability available to utilize all of its features, all of the operating system through the command line. So Linux has that kind of edge or advantage that it allows you to utilize the entire operating system through the command line. You can do lots and lots of stuff, which I will discuss later in this video. What kind of stuff can be utilized through the command line. And the fourth point is that we do not have licensing freedom on other operating systems, whereas we do have licensing freedom on Unix, which basically means that we do not have to pay huge licensing fees if we want to install Unix or Linux on our computers. And if you want to make some changes to the operating system, since this is open source, you can make a change in the code and you can create your own Linux flavor, and that sort of stuff can be done. So let's talk about Windows, since Windows is the most used operating system, and I think you are also utilizing now Windows operating system. And this was just an assumption, by the way. So let's discuss Linux versus Windows. Unix is more stable as compared to Windows, and there are a lot of issues with troubleshooting problems or issues with Windows, and that can lead lead to multiple further issues. But Unix is kind of stable because of the fact that multiple users and multiple communities are working together to actually solve the issues that run into the Unix operating system, whereas Windows issues are resolved by the Windows or Microsoft themselves, but not the community itself. So it has some sort of drawbacks in that. Unix is more efficient as compared to Windows, which is less efficient. It utilizes more of your CPU and RAM to actually run basic tasks such as browser, whereas Unix does not really need that much of RAM or even CPU usages to actually run through day-to-day analysis. The third point is that updates don't require that you have to purchase a new Windows every time. For example, if a new version is available, and currently Ubuntu, as of 2021, Ubuntu has about 20 different versions, and you can utilize any one of them for free of course. If you have a previous version, you can upgrade to the newest one for free of course, and you do not pay anything at all. Whereas on Windows, if you have Windows 7 and you need to install Windows 10, you might have to purchase a new license, obviously, because the first license cannot be actually redeemable for the next one. And Unix is portable, and that means it can be installed on any device or anything like that. It does not really have to be a computer or a laptop, that it can only be installed there. And it is the advantage is that it is consistent. So let's discuss these advantages further. Linux are installed on servers most of the time. For example, if you have been working on bioinformatics analysis and you need to actually analyze your data, and your lab or your university or your school has provided an access to a server or a computer that allows you to do that analysis, it is 95% of chances that it is going to be a Linux server, because of the fact that it is stable and it allows the command line processing, and you can do quicker analysis. So it allows you to install the Linux operating system or the Unix operating system on the servers, and so that we have the advantages of that server being stable over time as compared to utilizing other operating systems such as Windows or macOS. And multiple users can access the same server. So the university that has provided you the server has provided the same server to many other students, and they can access that server at the same time and run multiple programs at the same time, and even do the same exact procedure without the system being crashed or without your data being redundant or something like that, because each user has its own capabilities, each user has its own username and password and that sort of stuff. As I said earlier, that in most cases you are going to utilize the Linux server, so it is more secure as compared to other operating systems, and each user is authenticated and each user has its own data sets, and we can't really have permissions to utilize other data sets unless explicitly we are given that permission by the administrators. And then for example, if you have complicated task which is obviously done in bioinformatics analysis, we have to go through the huge textual data or tabular data or even CSV files, etc., or genomics data even. And that sort of stuff can be quickly and easily done through CMD or through terminal on Linux, as compared to even thinking about doing on Windows or other operating system, because it can take you a huge amount of time on Windows or other operating systems, but it can literally take seconds on Linux to actually do the same analysis. So we will obviously discuss that throughout this video series, but right now all you really have to understand is that Linux is quite efficient as compared to other operating systems. So there is you have to understand the Unix system structure first of all before we dive right into the analysis. In most cases, what really happens is that Unix or the Linux system structure it basically boils down to the four steps or four subtypes. The first one is text editor, and the second is compiler, the third is file system commands, and the fourth is text processing. So what we really need to understand is that Linux, whenever we talk about Linux, we either have to use the text editors such as gedit or the Vim or nano editors. The second is the compilers. If you are a developer and if you need to compile something, and that is your way to go. And the third one is file system commands. As I said earlier, as terminals or the command line options allow us to utilize a huge amount of file system commands on Linux as compared to Windows or other operating systems. And then, as I said earlier in our previous slide, we have a huge capability to do the text processing of tabular data CSV files that can take you a huge amount of time on other operating systems, but you can do it quickly on Linux. So there are three components of Unix. The first one is the kernel, and this is the most important one. The second, the shell, and the third is application. So I will describe each of them in detail, but first of all, you need to understand the diagram over here. So if you understand that this is the hardware of the operating system, this is a kernel, and this is the shell, and then we have the application at the top. So if you think about it, you can do it. So what really happens is that suppose that we have a mouse or a operating or a graphic card or a processor or RAM as hardware. Mouse or keyboard basically comes in the accessory type, but you can consider them as hardware for now. So we have to suppose that we have to talk to hardware to actually do some kind of analysis. To do that, what we really need to do is we need to actually push our task from top of the chart, and that is we have to discuss something to applications. And suppose that I want to do something on Linux computer and I want to edit a text. What I would do, I would request something to applications, or you can consider that this is a text editor such as gedit, which is a default text editor on Linux, and I want to edit something, and I'm giving an instruction to the gedit tool, and that edit tool basically takes my command and it passes down to the shell. Shell is the terminal which I have been discussing throughout this video. That shell or the terminal or the command line access is known as shell. It is transferred to the shell. A command is given to the kernel, which is the operating system, which basically translates this information to the hardware in binary information, and that is understood by the hardware, and the system actually does that analysis or does that task for you. So the information flows like this. If you think about this, the information flows like this, but the option or the task that we have to provide is from the application side as compared to the other section of the hardware. What really happens in other operating systems is that we do not really have a shell. We directly talk from the applications to the OS and then hardware, whereas there is no shell within other operating systems. So let's discuss discard this out, and we can go back to the main. So the kernel, as you know, as I said earlier, the kernel basically is a bridge between the hardware and the application, and it allows you to talk to the hardware directly, and you can pass out your commands, but obviously they have to go to the shell. Shell can be directly used. For example, if you don't want to utilize the application, as I said earlier, you can utilize the command line option, and you can directly type in something, and that can also go to the hardware. And so we have removed applications from this sense. And if you want to edit something, if you want to do some kind of analysis and you don't want to utilize a graphical user interface, in this case applications, then you can just do that through shell, and the same procedure will be followed, and the shell will pass the commands to kernel will translate them to binary language, and that will be given to the hardware, and then the analysis will be performed. So the important option to consider to utilize Unix is that we have the bash shell scripting. Shell is, as I said earlier, is a command line option or the terminal in Linux. We basically say command line on Windows or CMD on Windows, terminal and bash on Linux and macOS. But there are various other shells which we will discuss down the line in this video series, but not in this video. So a shell script basically combines various Linux commands that we pass into the terminal, and then we can store that in a single script, and we can run it again and again, which basically allows you to run a single analysis multiple times. If you want to do, for example, if you want to do an analysis today, and you can save that in a script, and you can do it after 10 days or 100 days even. you can just run that script again and the same analysis will be performed, which we will discuss and see how we can create shell scripts, how we can learn shell scripts in this video series. But for now, you just need to understand that a shell script allows you to basically write any program. These are small programs, small scripts. You can compare shell to Python or R even, because we are just writing a script to do particular analysis. But in shell, the difference is that in shell we are utilizing the built-in programs that are provided by Linux and even third-party programs to do our analysis, not just the syntax of the programming language. We are actually utilizing the programs that are installed on our computer to run a shell script. So the syntax to actually call a single program is quite easy. For example, if you want to work on an analysis and you have to run a program such as GROMAX to actually run the simulation, and what really happens is that you have to install that program and then you have to utilize that program through the command line. And the command syntax is quite simple. First of all, we have to provide the program name. The program name in this case can be GROMAX, and then we have to provide in the options, and then we finally have to provide the argument. The options basically mean that what kind of argument, what kind of option that you are providing to your program to execute in a certain way. For example, if I'm running a cluster omega tool on our computer and I want to do multiple sequence alignment, what I will do in this case is I will pass cluster as program name. Then I will pass the option as input. For example, I want to input the file. I would put -i, and then I will give the input file name. Then I will put -o as output, and then output file name will be provided, and then we can just press enter and the execution will be done and the multiple sequence alignment will be created. So what are the applications in bioinformatics? So let's discuss about that. Applications, there are huge applications in bioinformatics of Linux and Unix operating systems. We can do multiple stuff, as I said earlier. The analysis that takes hours and hours on your computer, on Windows or other operating systems, you can literally do that in seconds on Linux. And efficient, it allows you to do efficient handling of big data, and that includes biological data or any other data. You can utilize powerful command line tools, which basically allow you to directly talk to the hardware. You can do automated biological analysis that allows you to write script and run the analysis again and again, so that you don't have to worry about repeating the same code again and again. If you look at it in this way, that there are about 90% of bioinformatics programs or scripts or packages that are actually built for Linux computers as compared to other operating systems. So why is that? Let's discuss this. Bioinformatics analysis are usually done on servers, as I said earlier. So most programmers, most researchers actually code a program or code a script or code a package for so that it can be run on the servers as compared to a Windows operating system, because they do not have that option for themselves. So they actually create that program for themselves, considering that they are going to utilize it on the server on a Linux computer, that most researchers do actually. So at one point or another, they have to think about the utilization of that program on a server, which basically it consists of the operating system or as Linux. As I said earlier, most servers basically run Linux operating system. So they have to write a program for the Linux operating system, and most of the bioinformatics tools are written for Linux operating systems, such as GROMAX, Avogadro, or any other tool that are such as, which include basically genome assembly, genome annotation, gene prediction tools, even NGS tools that are utilized, such as BWA, and you can do SNP analysis, and various sort of stuff can only be done on Linux operating system, because those tools were only built for Linux operating systems, keeping in mind that those tools were supposed to run on the Linux servers. They developed them for themselves, and then they released it later down the stage of the journey of the tool. So they never actually come down to the Windows operating system, come down the drain of Windows operating system, because in most research facilities, people don't really use Windows operating system to do the analysis. They actually use Linux operating system, so they do not have any option to actually create a program for Windows operating system. So that is why bioinformatics Linux operating system is very useful because of the fact that we do not really have an option otherwise, because we can't really use programs on Windows operating system. So in one way or another we have to utilize Linux operating system to utilize those programs. So the content basically can be displayed on the terminal. It can be cut and paste. You can do piping and redirection. You can change data from one input into another. There is a very common and very useful advantage of utilizing Linux. In Linux, what really happens is that on terminal or on the shell, we have input from one command. Then we provide an input from one command, and that input becomes output after the execution of that command, and that output can become input for the next command, and same procedure can be done again and again. So this becomes piping and redirection. We can do quick cut and paste of the data. We can do cut and paste of directories and files. We can display the content of the file. For example, if you have a huge file and the file if the file goes beyond 1000 lines and you don't want to print them out altogether, you can quickly print 5 out of them and you don't have to worry about the other 995 lines or rows. So that's very easy, and you can just quickly go through the file if you want to do that. Then we have various other commands such as less, head, tail, which we had discussed earlier. We can do piping, redirection, which is done through these symbols, and then we can do cut and paste and various other sort of stuff, which we will discuss later down the road of this series. We are going to discuss various other programs and various other methodologies utilized in Linux. These are just a few of them. We are also going to do genome assembly, genome analysis, and file genetic analysis, cluster omega, etc., and more of that stuff later on. But in this video, you are just going to see the basic stuff about bioinformatics, and this is just an introduction. So I hope you understand this video. If you have any questions, you can reach us and we will most definitely help you. Thanks so much for watching this video. Have a great day.